Heaven help me if I don't want to create a scandal, especially on the centenary year, but I have always felt that many of Ray's films, stories, short stories, novellas, and everything are very autobiographical. She's like a mirror. She holds up a mirror to Amitabh, and the beauty of the film is that she does it again and again and again throughout the length of the film. Human beings are by definition fragile. Even strong characters, at some point of time in their lives, have shown fragility. Nrithiman Chatterjee had once done an interview with him. And in this interview, he had asked him that question, which I don't think anybody else has ever dared to ask him, that do you believe in God? I think it was Hitchcock who said, the more successful the villain, the better is the picture. He's going on saying these rubbish things, but his overall context is very strong. He understands that in Babylon, the king is Nebuchadnezzar.
Yes.
Yeah, and he knows that. And then he's saying Nebu tokhon nabalok.
Hello everyone, welcome to Filmcopath. In this video podcast, we continue our celebration of the birth centenary year of Satyajit Ray. Today we will discuss Parash Pathor and Kapurush O Mahapurush. Parash Pathor is a 1958 film by Ray after Pother Pachali and Aparajito, where we see a Bengali clerk named Paresh Pathor discovering a philosopher's stone, which gets him instant riches, and the film deals with the consequences of this fantastic discovery. Kapurush O Mahapurush, released in the year 1965, are two short films that were released in sort of a combined pack. Kapurush, based on a short story by Premendra Mitra, is about Amitabh, a screenwriter, who meets his ex-girlfriend in a sudden turn of events, who parted ways in the past due to his lack of courage. In Mahapurush, we see a religious Hindu family falling prey to a fraudulent godman, Virinchi Baba's false wit and charm. To discuss these two lesser acknowledged but brilliant movies by Ray, we have with us a person who has studied Ray for many years. Mr. Bhaskar Chattopadhyay. Bhaskar Chattopadhyay is an author, translator, film critic, and scriptwriter. His literary engagement with Ray's cinema spans for many years. His writings include the anthology 14 Stories that inspired Satyajit Ray, novelization of Satyajit Ray's 1966 film Nayak, and his new book, The Cinema of Satyajit Ray, where he revisits each one of Satyajit Ray's 39 feature films, shorts, and documentaries to investigate their cinematic and social context. He also speaks to a number of the master's collaborators as well, other directors and critics, to truly understand Ray and his work. Apart from his writings around Satyajit Ray, Bhaskar has written mystery thrillers like Here Falls the Shadow or The Disappearance of Sally Sequeira. Bhaskar, thank you so much for joining us. It's a real pleasure to have you with us today.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. It's an absolute honor to join you guys.
Bhaskar, before we start talking about the films, which we plan to discuss today, tell us about your book on the cinema of Satyajit Ray that released this week.
Well, yeah. So it's a book that I have been planning for quite a long time, and I had come across several books written about the cinema of Ray and the life of Ray, like biographies of Ray. Most of which were written by non-Indians, and there were some books, of course, in fact, quite a few books, of course, which were written in Bengal, in the Bengali language on Ray's cinema. But I always found it quite surprising that, even after so many years of Ray's passing, there wasn't a book written in the English language for Indians, written by an Indian on Ray's cinema. He's such a towering figure in our cinema, right? An important figure. So I thought that I'll do this. The other reason why I thought I should do this was very simple, because it was Ray's birth centenary this year, right? So I had to do something, and I said, yeah, let's do this. But the genesis of this book is a little strange. About 2.5 or 3 years ago, roughly about in that time frame, I had written a column for First Post, um, in which I used to take one film of Ray every week, and I used to write about it, analyze it, and so on and so forth. I wish I could do a little bit more analysis, but I had a word limit and so on and so forth, which was given to me. So they were like short essays on race films, and I did that. I did that for almost a year. I mean, for 39 weeks. And after it came, after the column became very popular, a lot of people told me that, why don't you think of converting this into a book? But I always felt that there was, just the collection of essays would not have cut it for me. So I thought I should do something else. So I thought I'll, speak to some people who have collaborated with Ray, who have worked with Ray, his actors, his technicians, crew, and also contemporary filmmakers, film critics, Ray scholars, historians, and so on and so forth. So I started by speaking to a few of them, but then more and more people kept on coming and saying that we'll be happy to speak to you. I was very surprised myself. I cold called some of these people, and they said we'll be happy to speak to you. Not unlike something that you are doing, actually. I mean, so sometimes you are surprised by the fact that people say yes. So I did that, and these are the two sections of the book. There's one section of the book which talks about the films of Ray, all of them, by the way. Haven't missed out any. There is another section which are interviews of people, about 17, 18 of them, from which we come to know more about Ray, the filmmaker, his process of filmmaking, his insights into life, what he was as a person, the man behind the legend. And so that's what the book is all about. Do you want me to show you the book? I have.
Please.
I don't know whether it'll be a mirrored or not. I don't know, but yeah, it's probably mirrored. Yeah. I don't know how to fix that, but that's the book. It's by Westland. But yeah, that's about the book in brief.
Maybe we can talk about Kapurush or Mahapurush right now, starting with Kapurush. So, when we talk about Kapurush, we see that the film beautifully portrays the male youth who often goes on firing blank shots but does not sum up the courage when the situation demands. And yet, they do have a lot of ego. Tell us what you feel about this characterization of the male character by Satyajit Ray in Kapurush and in general as well. If we can talk about, again, there's Aurangzeb Din Ratri, there also we see shades of that kind of a characterization.
Yes. Yeah. Let's talk about Kapurush first, and then maybe we can speak briefly about Aurangzeb Din Ratri and a few other films also. See, in Kapurush, which is based on a Premendra Mitra story, Janaiko Kapurusher Kahini, or the story of a coward. Essentially, there is this guy who, like many other young men, falls in love with a woman. And it just so happens that when it comes to the point of taking a bold decision of, I don't know what to call it, eloping or going and getting married and things like that. Yeah. I don't even think it's eloping, it's
right. Just a bold decision that I will handle this. That's it.
I will have a wife. I will have a responsibility.
Yeah. So he as you rightly said, Shubhadeep, he can't sum up that courage. He fails to do that. And what I really, really loved about the film is that there is a calm reserve of the lady.
Oh my God!
Played beautifully by Madhavi Mukherjee. She never yells at him, complains about it, makes a big hue and cry about it, creates a ruckus. Nothing. That she's like a mirror. What is a mirror? A mirror is just in the corner of a room. There is a mirror. It does nothing. All that it does is that it shows you your face.
Wow.
Yeah. It's still, it doesn't have a voice of its own, nothing. So Madhavi Mukherjee's character, Karuna, I think Karuna, right?
Yes.
Karuna, yes.
Is a mirror. And she holds up a mirror to Amitabh. And the beauty of the film is that she does it again and again and again throughout the length of the film. There is not just one opportunity in which, Amitabh, the protagonist, could have taken that step. There are many. Yeah. But again and again and again, she holds up a mirror to his face. And there is this beautiful, oh my God, it's so beautiful. Once again, the writing, the beautiful line of dialogue in that film. There is this scene in which she has come to her mesbari or his room, his hostel or something like that.
Yeah.
And she has said that, I'm ready to come with you. I mean, my family is trying to marry me off. I've left them behind. I'm ready to come with you. Now you tell me, you take you just say the word.
Yeah.
Off we go. That's it. And he hesitates. He says, I was not prepared for this. You've just walked into my room, and he's trying to give his own justification, which is also a brilliant portrayal, by the way. We'll talk about that later. But let's stay on Karuna. Amitabh tells Karuna that if only you could give me a few more days. And she says to him, there's no use, Ami. And he says, but why? Why are you saying that? And she says, what you lack is not time. It's something else.
Yes.
And she just goes away, she just leaves the room, and oh my God, that's just beautiful writing. She doesn't even say that you lack courage. You don't have this one. She said, তোমার যেটা অভাব সেটা তো সময়ের নয়, সেটা অন্য কিছু।
And that sequence, if you remember, when Soumitra asks for the sleeping pills, and he says, like, so many of the lovers say, what if I take the whole thing? And she says, I don't think so. And he just walked away. Oh, so beautiful.
It's just beautiful. মনে তো হয় না. I don't think so. I don't think you will do it. Because I know you too well. Know that if you could not see, because taking your life is a far more difficult, it needs a lot of courage. It's a far more difficult thing to do than taking the decision that I am going to spend the rest of my life, I'm going to take the responsibility and of a family life. It's far more difficult. So if he could not do that, I don't think he'll be able to do this. But to come back to the character of Amitabh, about this guy who is too sure of himself and things like that, Again, I don't know whether it will be politically correct to say this, Arup and Shubhadeep. Heaven help me if I don't want to create a scandal, especially on the centenary year, but I have always felt that many of Ray's films, stories, short stories, novellas and everything are very autobiographical. Okay. You guys are the editors, do whatever you have to. But if you read the short story Akhoy Babu's Shikha, I think it's very autobiographical. There is this man who has a son who is a teenage son, and Akhoy Babu thinks that he knows better than his son, but his son, as it turns out, every single time his son knows far better than him. Very autobiographical, and I personally think Nayak is one of his most autobiographical films. This is what I feel. He portrays the loneliness at the top through the star, but I think it's very autobiographical. Here too, I think, and I'm not saying in the context of taking a bold decision of a relationship or something like that. But in general, I think he's visited, you are right, Shrodev, he's visited this nuance in as many as 2 films very prominently. And both the films in the protagonist is Soumitra. So in Arune Dimratri as well, there's this guy who thinks he's too sure of himself. He thinks, that he is very confident and everything. Whereas his pride and his ego is crushed in the face of the calm reserve of the lady. In the case of Arune Dimratri, it is, I think, Apurna. Played by Sharmila Thakur. And in the case of Kapurush, it is Karuna, played by Madhavi Mukherjee. Somewhere I feel that Ray must have felt that maybe we men are sometimes too full of ourselves. In an interview with Aparna Sen, again, which you will find in this book, Rinadi asks him, Aparna Sen asks him that, what do you think about women in general? And Ray says that since nature has made women weaker, physically weaker, nature has compensated that phenomenon by making them emotionally stronger. Okay. Now, this is coming straight from Ray, by the way. Okay. And he explores this definitely in 2 films. He explores this in this film Kapurush, and he explores this in Arune Dimratri. He explores this in Mahanagar.
Yes.
Yeah.
He explores this in Aguntuk. Yeah, the character of Anila, who says that I have the strength to place my trust in this man who is coming to my house as a stranger. You don't. She said, she says that to the husband, So yeah. I think they, Ray, time and again has explored this. So yeah, I find that fascinating.
Even in the Calcutta trilogy, so if you see the woman characters, they're so strong. And think about, Siddhartha in Pratitwandi, he comes out of the car and he's wanting to fight, but he stops. He's always stopping at every juncture.
Yes. He has been stopping at everything in his life, basically. He's just stopping short. Whereas there is his sister.
Yeah.
Who's just going ahead. She knows very clearly what she wants to do.
Right.
So there is that. Yeah. Then of course in Sharmila Tagore's character in Shima Baddha.
Oh yeah.
Calm, reserve and everything. And Barun Chando's character Shyamulendu, he's this smart executive and everything, right? But in the face of her reserve and her ethics, his pride is crushed. He does it again and again. Yeah, Shubhadeep, you had a question.
Yes, Bhaskar, I was going to know from you that at some level, could you empathize with characters like Amitabh or Soumitra's character in Arune Dimratri? Is there a way through which maybe would it be that Ray also tried to portray the kind of fragility the manhood has, and the way he tries to cover it up with the macho-ness or whatever? Would you think that is some of the themes there?
It's a beautiful question, Shubhadeep. Characters are what? Characters are human beings, and realistic characters are even more so. Human beings are by definition fragile. Even strong characters, at some point of time in their lives, have shown fragility, right? Let's take one example of a very strong character. Let's take the example of Karuna itself in this film. Has she not shown any sign of fragility ever? She has. She breaks down, saying that, my family doesn't like me and so on and so forth. And it is subtly implied, although not mentioned, but it is subtly implied that she is an orphan child who has been raised by her uncle, and So there is that, so fragility is a human trait, I feel. So when Ray tries to show Amitabh as fragile, it is, I don't think it is a critique. It is by way of critique, or it is by way of criticism.
Mhm.
It is simply who he is. Okay. And this is who he is. This is his existence. And it just so happens that there is not so fragile lady that he has fallen in love with. And it just so happened that out of that, there is a beautiful story called Kapurush that has evolved. If the woman would have been as fragile as this man, then maybe it would not have been a story. There would have been no conflict, and she would have gone home and like spent the rest of her life, and so on and so forth. But to answer your question, do I empathize with the character of Shaumitra's in Kapurush? To some extent, yes, because the man is just, he's a hopeless. He's a hopeless character. What is the poor bugger going to do? He just can't sum up the courage. He thinks he can, but right at that juncture, he says no. When she comes, okay. I don't want to give away the climax of this one. When there is a final meeting at the end of the film, he has an opportunity to correct all his wrongs, and years of repentance that he has had after the breakup. But he doesn't. He just can't. He thinks he can, but he just can't. I do not empathize so much with Shaumitra's character in Aranit Dinratri, simply because I think he exploits some people.
Yes.
Yeah, he exploits the poor and so on and so forth. And there is a glimpse of repentance later on. I think in a scene, I haven't watched the film in some time, but I think in a scene in which Sharmila Tagore takes him to the Chowkidar's quarters.
Yes.
And, she says, did you know that his wife or his child or his family is sick? Did you know that? And he has this moment of repentance on his face and everything. But he also is very brash. He thinks he can get away with anything and things like that, He sometimes misbehaves with his own friends,
Yes, yeah.
He kind of, towers over them, so to speak. So yeah, I empathize less with him, with that character of Aranit Dinratri. But I think this guy, he's just a coward,
Another thing, again, we kind of touched upon when we were discussing about Parash Pathor is the way Ray shows that loneliness cannot be overshadowed by riches or even intellectualism. One guy is an intellectual, one guy is very rich, and yet they are lonely. And this lady, who is also very strong-willed, is also lonely. And that theme of loneliness also keeps on coming back, in so many other films, in Kanchenjunga, in his later films. So what do you think about that, of this motif keeping on coming back?
See, this is a motif that has been a constant motif in everything that Ray has done.
Mm-hmm.
Everything. As you know very well, that almost all of his literature, his short stories, are about lonely people. His short stories. Yeah. He himself said this. He in fact, towards the beginning of Parash Pathor, he's essentially a lonely man. He doesn't, nobody really understands him too much, he goes and sits under that folly in Curzon Park, and he's nobody talks to him, nobody to talk to. He doesn't have any friends. His only friend, by the way, is that little boy.
Yes.
Yeah, that's just beautiful, right? I mean,
yeah.
So yeah, the motive of loneliness has always come back again, I think it has got something. It's very autobiographical. I think it's got something to do with the fact that Satyajit Ray had a very lonely childhood.
Mm.
And he himself has said that in his biographies and so on and so forth. So his afternoons used to be spent uh, wondering about things and about observing, exploring scientific phenomenon. I don't know if you remember that there is this thing about a pinhole camera, which is a natural pinhole camera. So there's the sun outside, and there is a very small hole on the door, and the sun rays are coming inside, and an inverted image of what is happening in the street is being cast on his wall. He experienced that, as a child, and I was thinking that is the perfect image of a lonely child spending his afternoon. It's such a cinematic moment, and he mentions that in his, and it has happened in real life, in his life, so he was a lonely child, and he explored this theme a lot. He does this in Nayak. It's very lonely at the top, and several other films. So yeah, it's come back. Yeah, to answer your question briefly, it's come back.
You talked a little bit about the climax scene, and we don't want to give it away for Kapurush. But still, if we want to talk about Karuna, and why do you think Karuna did what she did in the last scene? Like, what was it necessary? What do you think is the implication of using that particular shot and scene when he's like sleeping and suddenly she appears out of nowhere?
Yeah. Have you guys read the original short story?
I have not read.
No,
Okay.
I have not read it as well.
It's a bit different. Okay. And I think I will hazard to say that this is perhaps the only instance in which I think the original is better than what is shown in the film. An only instance of a Satyajit Ray adaptation, in which the original is, in the original, she says that, she has come to pick up a relative and so on and so forth. And here she comes back to say that, whatever she says, that bottle of the medicine and everything. So she does this, I think, once again, as I said, to prove to this one that here I am. Let's go.
And you still cannot.
Yeah. And she knows that he cannot. And I emphasize this, she knows that he cannot. He will not be able to do it. See, because if she knew that maybe Amitabh is a changed person after so many years.
He brought one ticket. He bought one ticket from the ticket counter. Why don't you buy two?
Yes. He just bought one ticket. It's a good point. I hadn't noticed that actually. So he just buys one ticket to Hashimara, and so he she does that because she knows that Amitabh has not changed one bit, because she spent some time with. She spent an entire Sunday and the night before that with him and her own husband, to know that he's not changed. He's the same guy.
And she also answers, Amitabh was keeping on asking, are you happy? Are you happy? She kind of also answers in asking for the sleeping pills. So she needs sleeping pills. Yeah. And yet Amitabh cannot ask her to stay.
Yes. That's another interesting point. In fact, in asking her over and over again that, are you happy? Are you happy? Basically, Amitabh is exposing his own insecurities. The mirror analogy that I told you, right? He is basically, not even once does she say, yes, I am happy, or not even once does she say, I am not happy. So she just says that, what do you know about my husband? You've just spent a few hours with him. How much can you know about my husband? So she evades that question, but Amitabh goes on and exposes himself and his own insecurities. His own card is and lack of strength and lack of guts, basically, to her yet again, which is why she comes. Which is why she comes to rub it in that that look, you're you're still not
You're still the same.
you're still the same. You're still not the guy who can take her lady away. Yeah.
Okay, so before moving on from Kapurush, just wanted to, also acknowledge how good Haradhan Bandyopadhyay was in the film.
Oh,
Yeah,
yes.
he was so good. He was so good.
Yeah.
He is also great in Mohanagar, but in this film, he's so natural, so organically. He puts up that image of that man who does not know anything in his own world
Yeah.
and doesn't even understand that the wife is not happy.
Yes. 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 A few weeks or months ago, I don't know if I should say this. I actually say a lot of things that I should not say. But a few days ago, I had read a Facebook post, I think, in one of the Satyajit Ray groups, in which there was an analysis of his character. And I think the person who did the analysis said that he or she was of the opinion, I'm forgetting, he or she was of the opinion that he knew, which is why he walked away to get the water and gave this to
Okay,
lovebird some space and everything. I would beg to disagree.
I think so. Yeah.
Yes, yes. I don't think he knew. Although in his own happy-go-lucky way, and I don't know if you guys have realized this, that he is also unhappy.
Yeah, he is.
Yeah,
Of
yeah.
course.
He says, "I'm growing this blasted tea in this blasted country and drinking whiskey." It's such a powerful line, right? I'm growing this
Yeah.
blasted tea in this blasted country, this blasted plantation, and I'm drinking whiskey. If there is something called conscience, you
Drink it.
drown it. You drown it in whiskey. So again and again he keeps talking about his loneliness and everything. And he keeps on saying that the fact that I am taking you home, the pleasure is all mine. Because I want your company. I want somebody to speak to, which makes me think that maybe he is not happy with his wife, and so all of that. Does he know? I don't think so. Is he? And there's a beautiful scene in which he falls asleep with the cigarette, with the Charminar in between his fingers, and it was a Charminar, by the way. And he falls asleep on the rock, and that was a deep focus shot, I think. No, it was a deep focus shot, I think.
Yeah, I think.
I think so.
Yeah.
And the cigarette burns his fingers, and he suddenly wakes up with a jerk and everything. Feel for him.
Mm.
There's a moment when you feel for him, because he's not a bad man.
No,
He,
he is not.
yeah, he never abuses his wife. It's very evident that he never abuses his wife. He's trying to be friendly with his wife and things like that.
I think he kind of realizes they are not the best match, because he also mentions in one place, I think, that you definitely are tired of the same face and the same person. So it must be feeling good there's someone new.
Yes, he hints at that.
Yeah.
So yeah, so and he hints at that in a very should I say cuckoldish way, almost, like with a sly look on his face and everything, like. So so I don't think that I find him an endearing character, to be very honest with you.
Yes.
Because he's helped this guy, he's brought him home, he spent a lovely evening and the wonderful day next day with him. He's
And he's
not,
so honest. He's so honest
yes,
about everything.
yes, he's so honest.
Very forthright. Yes.
Yes, he talks about the so-called hierarchy system in the plantation and everything. That if you would have been an assistant manager, I would not have been sitting here having breakfast with you.
Correct.
He's forthright. He's being honest and so on about it. So I find him he's a brilliant actor. brilliant actor. Yeah. So I find him beautiful in this. I also find him very good in another film. You spoke about Mahanagar. Of course, I think that is his best film. I think best Ray film, certainly. But I also first find him very good in Shaka Prashaka.
Oh yeah,
Is very good. He's aged by then, but
the elder son. Yes.
yeah.
Okay, we will move to Mahapurush.
Yeah.
And it's very interesting, this transition, because when I watched both of them in succession, as it used to be, the previous release, the video CDs and all of that. It's kind of Kapurush ends with a train entering the station, and Mahapurush starts with a train leaving a station. And the most interesting part that I feel is Soumitra, who is kind of, the matinee idol of that time, such a beautiful looking person, intelligent person, he does not sum up the courage. But this other guy in Kapurush, whom we always put as, that timid guy. In Bhaskar Chattopadhyay, he's that timid guy who Soumitra kind of overshadows. He rescues in such a heroic way in the climax of Mahapurush.
Right.
So that contrast, let's talk about that contrast of the two films.
Yeah. So I think Ray has done this, I think, in two films, no, if I'm not mistaken. Tinkonna, like anthology films.
Tinkonna, yes.
Tinkonna and the double bill of Kapurush O Mahapurush. I think these are the only two films, unless I'm very mistaken. And of course,
yes.
And I think he did plug in his son's film Photik Chand with Piku, because Piku and Photik Chand were screened at as a double bill, basically.
Correct.
Piku was Satyajit Ray's film. Photik Chand is his son's film. In Tinkonna, and I'm coming to this one because I want to talk about the contrast, basically. I think in Tinkonna, all three stories have the same tone, the same mood, and although Monihara is a horror and the only horror film of Satyajit Ray, but the tonality of the film, the mood of the film, the ambience of the film is virtually the same, whereas in Kapurush O Mahapurush, Kapurush is a very serious film, and it's a drama, but Mahapurush is an out and out comedy, and it's also an expose.
Yeah.
Right. So I think maybe he wanted to. He had thought that it would be a good idea to give the audience some relief from a serious subject. I don't know. We are all children of conjecture here. So I think. Maybe he must have thought that let's give the audience something to laugh about after a serious film and everything. And he brought in this character who is timid. And so on and so forth, and there's a slight effeminacy about him, and so on and so forth. Yeah, and but that's got nothing to do with that's not any commentary by Ray, but Ray is basically trying to say that here is this guy who has the same problem. He loves a woman. In all probability, the woman also loves him back, but he cannot summon up the courage to go and tell her. But now there is this gang of friends that he has, and every time I watch this, I also am reminded of Parosan.
Nice, yes.
So there's this gang of friends that he has, and there are some of them who is like a slightly elderly. In fact, all of them are, I think, elder to him, and in this one.
Yes.
And they help him. Get him to propose to his lady love through the exposure of a charlatan Godman. It's just beautiful. So what is his journey? His journey, and in fact, he says this in one of the things, and he says that Nibaronda says that okay, expose korte hobe. So yeah, expose korte hobe, because he thinks that it will take him to his lady love, right?
Yes, yes, yes.
কারণ কারণ ও এক্সপোজ না হলে এরাও হবে না, তো ই সেজ কারা, যারা ওর কাছে গিয়ে ধরা নিচ্ছে, ও গড আবার কাজ বাড়ালে, because he is not interested in the he's not interested in the ethics of the thing, he just wants to go and propose to his girl, so to Buchki, I think, right? So
Puchki.
yeah, so it's a contrast, definitely. Yeah, I haven't watched too many films by that particular actor. I don't know his name. I
Also forgot.
Yeah, so but he was fantastic in the film. I think he did exactly what he was supposed to do. And he's this guy, he's like a bhola of Parosan, like he has to be taken care of, he has to be babysat,
Yes,
like people
yes.
have to come to his rescue, so that he can go and rescue his girl. And like, so two different kinds of characters there, but he does summon up the courage to go and do that. Yeah.
So Bhaskar, I wanted to ask you that actually Mahapurush is not the only critique and on Godman or fallacies of religion by Ray.
Yeah.
We have seen it in Devi, we have seen it in Jai Baba Felunath as well. So what do you think about that? What do you think about this, the critique that Ray has done in a couple of movies about Godman and the fallacies of religion at large?
Well, yes, in Devi, not Godman per se, but blind faith.
Yes.
Blind faith.
And of course, he does that in Ganeshatru as well, right?
Yeah.
So the war of logic and reasoning with religious superstition. That is, I think, this is what it is all about. And of course, the Godman thing comes, I think, in some of his stories, like Nitai O Mahapurush, like Jai Baba Felunath. I think there was another story, which is the story in which Bohurupi. Yeah, he but in Bohurupi he gives it a slight twist and says that, the Godman can see through my makeup and things like that, So he's done a lot of experimentation, actually, because his mind was very open. But yeah, he was a savant, and he had a scientific temper. He did not believe in God. Towards the end of his life and career, whatever. In fact, I would like to stress on this, that right towards the end of his life, when he was in Bellevue and so on and so forth, Dhriman Chatterjee had once done an interview with him. It was published, I think it was published in Anandalok. It was a long interview. Sundata Dhriman Chatterjee is very proud of this interview, and rightfully so, because it was very detailed and everything. And in this interview, he had asked him that question, which I don't think anybody else has ever dared to ask him, that, do you believe in God? So he'd taken some time to answer, and he'd said, look, I don't believe in somebody with a white beard sitting high up in the sky and overseeing things and things like that. But is there an entity or a power, a formless, lifeless, shapeless power somewhere? I don't know. My doctors tell me there are, because some of the things that have happened with me, even they can't explain, and they're men of science. So I am thinking about it. He was thinking about it, but I think before he could, and who knows, before he could reach any conclusion, or at least we know of that conclusion, before that, he passed away. You get glimpses of that in Agantuk as well. Remember? Je kedebe alo, kedebe pran. It's a spiritual thing. It's a spiritual thing. He is thinking about God. And in Agantuk, we all know that Utpal Satyajit Ray, right? I mean,
Yeah.
So he's thinking about God. But he's also saying कि आजकल का दिने मंगलमय ईश्वर উপর ভরসা রাখা ক্রমশ মুশকিল হয়ে পড়ছে. So he is not thinking about a man, as he said, a bearded man somewhere sitting and trying to run things, trying to do good for people. No, he is thinking about it in a different way, in a different power and things like that. What he has problems with is he's saying that this thing, if it exists, by chance, if it exists, is a very personal thing. I have a relationship with this thing. It's a one-to-one, very personal thing. It's a function. You know, Shubhadeep, you are a man of mathematics and statistics. You will answer this. It's a function, you know. It's a very personal thing. Who are you to tell me what to do, how to manage this relationship and so on and so forth?
One-to-one, not one-to-many.
It is not one-to-many. It is not many-to-one. It is a one-to-one relationship. Why are you imposing your rules on how I am going to look at this relationship? He had a problem with that. And that is the problem philosophically that he has explored in films like Devi. He's explored in films like Mahapurush. He's explored in stories like Jaya Baba Felunath. And he's done that in Ganoshatru as well. What it is, I think he never had a problem with, and he never had a problem with the notion of an omniscient, omnipresent God or a power. But he said, see, because he was a Brahmo, and there is no concept of idolized God in that religion, right? But is there a concept of a higher entity? Yes, there is. Did he subscribe to that concept? We don't know. He has never talked about it, you know. But he's saying that if it does, then it is very personal. It is up to me how I nurture that relationship. If necessary, I will talk to my God. If necessary, I will complain to my God about this, and so on and so forth. But I am not going to be bound by rules set up by others.
Institutionalized religion.
Yeah, he has a problem with organized religion. He has a problem with dictums of blind faith, of religious extremism, of religious superstition. He speaks very briefly about it in Tagore's this one also. What is the name of the novel? Gore by Day. You know, so of course it deals with several other things like nationalism and so on and so forth. But very briefly, he talks about that. So yeah.
And I think that so nicely put. Because he was open, because it was that one-to-one, he could write that beautiful song in Devi, kind of a Shama Sangit.
Yes. Yeah. He believed in studying something before critiquing it.
Yes. And I was just watching Mahapurush once more to prepare for this one. That scene where Robi Ghosh has this, 4 hands, and in the last scene you have, purses and money bags in all of those hands. I don't think if that scene was shot today, what kind of repercussions it would have faced. Because it says a lot, right?
Yeah. You saw what happened with films like what was that film PK, right? With Amir Khan film PK, yes, right? Yes, PK. There was a similar scene in which there is this God like a man who was dressed
Shiva
up
being someone impersonating Shiva being chased.
Yeah. I mean things have changed.
Yeah.
Let's not get into that because that is a whole other discussion, and probably I'll be jailed, or I think all 3 of us will be jailed or something. But then I had once asked Shyam Benegal, do you think that the kind of films that Ray made, Devi and Ganoshatru and Hirokraja Deshe, would these films have released today? And Shyamji said that yeah, because don't forget that he's a towering man in the world of cinema. Yes, I agree, but still, we have been seeing a lot of nonsense these days, I think. Yeah.
Of
So,
course.
yeah. But to come back to that scene, it's also very comic because there is this guy who is like a strap on, like a brazier almost, like a with this
Yes, yes,
Natraj
yes.
hands and everything, and there is a Lata Mangeshkar song playing in the background, मैं
Right.
मैं नाचूं मेरा मन नाचे and everything. There's a song playing in the background.
And another very interesting thing, Bhaskar, about Mahapurush is this is a critique of that Godman and the fraudulent man and all of that. But more than half of the film is about his charisma. So he does not just kind of rubbishes him off. He kind of shows what makes the Godman and how can they always keep on charming and frauding you.
See, I think it was Hitchcock who said, the more successful the villain, the better is the picture. Okay, and nothing. And today we talk about Heath Ledger as Joker and all of those things, But back in those days, Satyajit Ray showed that you have to make your antagonist very strong. He does that in Joy Baba Filmnath also, by the way.
Yes.
Yeah.
That is something else.
Something else, right? So in this film, even the protagonist is saying, protagonist, I mean, yeah, you can call him the protagonist or the ensemble protagonist. The leader of the ensemble protagonist, Mibaranda, he said, "Oti uchcha srenir Robhineta. He's an actor of the highest order. He's got photographic memory. He understands mass psychology. And we see it also. It's not that he's just understood it. What is he doing in his free time?
He's reading.
He's reading. Because he has to prepare. Because if he doesn't, how will he talk like that? I'm forgetting. He's extremely knowledgeable as well. He is going on. जिसको हम लोग हिंदी में बोलते हैं ना, फेक रहा है. He's going on saying these rubbish things, but his overall context is very strong. He understands that in Babylon, the king is Nebuchadnezzar.
Yes.
Yeah, and he knows that, and then he's saying Nebu tokhon nabalok. So there is
cool writing.
Yeah. তখনই এর চোখে জ্যোতি দেখেছিলাম আমি. So and then he says the thing about Monu and Plato, Jesus, and Ray's legendary wordplay. I knew the Buddha when he was a chokra.
And I simply, that scene in the train where he says the sun is rising, oat. Oh man, I mean, you know what it is, and you still feel, as an audience also, you feel very intrigued.
Yeah.
Someone is telling the sun to rise and it's actually rising over the horizon.
Yeah. And he says, "Ke Baba, আমার বড় কষ্ট বাবা." তখন he says, ধরো শক্ত করে ধরো। কি ক্লেশ আছে, দ্বিধা আছে করে, he goes on saying, and the music rises over it and everything. And overall, I think Charuprakash Ghosh, right?
Yes.
Yeah,
beautiful, so good.
Fabulous actor, and he is. The first time I saw him was in Aparajito, I think. He played the role of the landlord in Banaras, I think. Yes. Yeah, and then of course we saw him in other films like Obhijan and yeah. But Charuprakash Ghosh portrays a very charismatic Godman, a very charismatic Bhavanando, if you will. So he has all the traits which make people fall for him and follow him as a religious leader. I would believe that even people sitting in the audience know that he's a fraud. Okay, I mean, at least some of them know that he is a fraud. Okay, we definitely do, because it's been shot that way. But yeah. But I would really, really love to talk. I mean, every Ray film has its moments for me, and I'm sure it does for you guys as well, and for everybody else. My favorite moment of Kapurush has got nothing to do with the Godman. It has got to do with this Professor Noni, who is Shantosh Datta's character, like, and he is doing this, he's boiling grass, and he's saying that, if I can solve this problem, I'll be able to solve world hunger. It's just absolutely amazing.
And it's also very quirky. I got reminded of Professor Shonku with a harmonium playing and a tube and boiling of grass. Those kind of quirky things out of which Shonku used to create wonders.
Do you know what is that a motive for? In fact, that's a metaphor for. I'm sorry, that's actually a metaphor for Ray making beautiful films with very, very simple equipment, very limited means, and sitting in a small little part of the world. That is I think what it is a metaphor for. And
the Shonku thing you are talking about,
the Shonku thing, the Professor Noni
thing,
yeah,
this one as well. Yeah, that makes so much sense. Yes.
Yeah. So I think that's he knows this, right? He's a filmmaker. He knows this. Right. That I don't have an reflex. What do I do? I don't have this lens. What do I do? And he starts thinking, okay, what do I have? And let me start thinking, what is the best I can do? I want this shot. What is the best that I can do with this? And so that is reflected in Professor Shonku's laboratory as well, in this Noni sequence and so on and so forth. Yeah.
And also, I mean, of course, you mentioned about Professor Noni, but I also wanted to know from that ensemble, because there are so many characters, small characters who are great ones. Who is your favorite out of all those characters that you have?
Well, it's difficult to choose one. There's Poromatto, obviously. Poromatto is this insurance agent, insurance salesman, basically.
Yes.
And he is focusing on the chess game. And even with all that focus, he is losing to Nivaran. And Nivaran, not even once does Nivaran, tell him that you are losing, So he simply very calmly says, mate in 2 moves, Vaya. He doesn't even checkmate him.
Correct.
Look at the beauty of the thing, Satyajit Ray used to love chess, by the way, and that's proved in so many films, including Nayak. But he's saying, mate in 2 moves, Vaya. He's giving a fair warning. And even after that warning, he's not even done, checkmated him, So he still loses, and he blames it on the cacophony in the room, saying that chess takta intellectual pandemonium and all of that.
Right. Yes.
I love that guy, of course. If I'm not mistaken, he's the same guy who played Jyoti later in Nayak, right?
Yes, the assistant.
Yeah. And of course, there is Shato Bandhopadhyay, who also appeared in Nayak as the WWWW guy. And he is this other beautiful character. He says, Jiveti Palieche, Gidni Kit Korche. He said, my maid has run off and my wife is nagging. And he goes to pick up a book from the shelf and he sees this photograph on there is a nude photograph of some Renaissance painting or something like that. I don't know what it is. So he knows that if he removes a book, the photograph will be revealed, and he's a middle-aged man, he thinks he tries to do this and the other guy calls him, and he's scared, so again, the quintessential middle-class, average middle-aged man, with fear in his heart.
Yeah. So he wants to go to 1914 to buy some iron at that time at that rate and sell it at this time. That's his wish, and what he wants to achieve out of this Godman.
Right.
That's so middle class. Yeah, some profit. He does not aspire so much. Some kind of a profit.
Yeah.
And of course, there's Ravi Ghosh.
Yeah. Oh, let's not talk. Ravi Ghosh is one of my favorite actors, and in this way,
he is.
Yeah. And he says, there is this scene in which he says, first class mutton. his entire accent has become like North Calcutta and first class একটু খাওয়া তো মটন একটু করুন তো দেখি একদিন বড় একদম স্টেল হয়ে যাচ্ছে he is not saying stale stale হয়ে যাচ্ছে so
and only in that previous scene he is like আমার আলাদা করে আমার কোনো প্রয়োজন নেই ইচ্ছা নেই কিছু নেই
বাবার ইচ্ছা and he slaps him on his head and he shuts down. Shobhadip, you had a question?
No, I was just plugging in something in the interview when we talked to Sharmila Thakur and we talked about Robi Ghosh to Sharmila Thakur. She used to tell that Robi Ghosh was that one actor where for whom Satyajit Ray didn't have any instructions.
Yeah.
So he was free to do whatever he wanted. The kind of confidence a person like Satyajit Ray can have on an actor, like it is epitomized by Robi Ghosh. And I mean, yes, I mean, who else would? Why would you give a script to Robi Ghosh with what he can do in those moments?
And she's right. She's done Arunadhin Ratri with him, and he says there's this scene, the memory game scene, in which he just very casually puts his palm on her
Yes,
on her knee, and it's just and we are like shocked. How can he do that and everything, But in that scene, it suddenly becomes acceptable because he did it. Had there been any other actor in the world doing it, no matter which comedic actor it is, it would not have been acceptable. Ray would have had to cut off, and then he puts on her sunglasses and everything, and he's just absolutely.
His timing, I mean.
Yeah.
Oh my God.
Yeah. Robi Ghosh, Santosh Dotto, Tulsi Chakraborty, these people. I don't think there will be any replacements of these people ever again.
True.
Yeah.
And there's this another character whom I loved in the film is that there was this Marwari character who is one of the devotees who brings the sweets and all. He is that same man who was in that train when Jatayu comes in. In the Shonarkella Jatayu introduction scene, and that guy is eating, and Jatayu is telling, I have written this many novels, and he is nodding his head. That's the man. So this was the team that kind of Satyajit Ray depended on, and they were small roles, and they kind of filled in the whole environment.
Yeah, completely. Ray always had a team, and like any great director in the world. Any great filmmaker in the world, you always tend to go back to the same people. Whether it's Kurosawa, whether it's Hitchcock, you tend to go back to the same kind of guys, basically. So you don't have to direct them too much because they understand you, they know you, and in art that is so important, right? Because and not just in art. An art which is also a craft, which is also commerce, so there is the entire issue of time running out and things like that, so it's very important that your people understand you don't have to direct them. So when you get an actor like Robi Ghosh, as Rinkudi said, that you don't have to give a script to him, you just tell him that this is what the scene is and he'll execute it. Done. So as a filmmaker, I would love that, right? I mean, I don't have to do anything.
When you talk about Robi Ghosh, I don't want to, but I just cannot stop myself that, in Aurobindo Ratri, the bathing scene, and he says, "Dekli, আমি কিভাবে smartly গেলাম, smartly গিয়ে নিয়ে চলে আসো." তোরা একদম, this is so, I cannot explain.
Then the last dialogue, Deem Mighty, and
the film ends with that, right?
Yeah.
Oh my God.
Deem Mighty. Oh God, yeah. So yeah, I mean, but notice again, one of my teachers of writing, he talks about this entire thing about being faithful to your art, but also being ruthless. Okay, notice how Ray did not cast him as Jatayu. You see what I mean, right? So you have to be ruthless in your art, I have known actors and actresses who are like at the highest level of performance. They're like epitomes of acting. They have been ruthlessly cut out of Ray's films, including Soumitra Chattopadhyay. And said, no, you are not doing this film. And they understand. They understand. Okay, uni bolchen, so there must be a reason. So it's like that.
Thank you so much, Bhaskar. I mean, what a beautiful organic discussion we had. We really enjoyed your inputs and your insights, your trivia and your analysis. It was such an enriching experience, actually, and we hope that in future we could talk to you again about some other Ray film. Thank you so much for joining us today.
My pleasure, guys. My pleasure. My absolute pleasure. It was a wonderful discussion. And when one talks about Ray, one can go on and on and on. There's no end, of course. But yeah, let's call it a day, and hopefully we'll have it some other time.
Absolutely.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.